The train station was packed with people moving in every direction, the air filled with the metallic screech of arrivals and departures. But amid the crowd, she stood alone, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as though she could shield her breaking heart. Her name was Alara. She had just walked away from the man she thought she would marry, a man who had promised her forever but shattered her trust in a single, careless night. Now she was left with a suitcase, a heart stitched with betrayal, and no one waiting for her. As the tears pricked her eyes, Alara whispered to herself, "I just need someone, anyone, just for a moment." And then, with her throat burning and her courage fraying, she turned to the tall stranger beside her and said words she never imagined she'd utter. "Pretend to hug me." The stranger paused, startled. He was sharply dressed, with the kind of presence that drew glances without effort. His dark hair was slightly tousled, his expression unreadable. For a second, he seemed frozen, as though no one had ever asked him for something so raw, so human. Then, without a word, he stepped closer and wrapped his arms gently around her. To anyone else, it might have looked like two lovers reuniting, but to him, and to her, it was something entirely different. His embrace was steady, firm, and safe, carrying no judgment, no questions. For Alara, the world quieted, and for those few seconds, she could breathe again. When they finally pulled apart, her cheeks flushed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't even know your name." His lips curved into a faint, almost reluctant smile. "Call me Adrian." What she didn't know was that Adrian Hale wasn't just a stranger. He was a billionaire who lived in the shadows of his own wealth, lonely in glass towers, cut off from the world by the walls of privilege. People knew his name, his fortune, his empire. But no one had ever known his heart. Until that moment, the spark. Alara expected him to walk away, like most strangers would after such a fleeting encounter. But Adrian didn't. He noticed the exhaustion in her eyes, the way she clutched her worn suitcase like it was her only anchor. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low but gentle. "No," she admitted, surprising herself. Usually, she wore her pain like armor, hidden from view. But with him, a man she'd known for less than 5 minutes, the truth slipped out. Perhaps it was because she thought she'd never see him again. He hesitated, then nodded toward the cafe inside the station. "Come on, let me buy you a coffee. No strings, no questions. Just company." Against her instincts, she agreed. And in that crowded cafe, over 2 steaming mugs, they began talking. At first, it was nothing but fragments, safe topics, casual words. But soon, her story spilled. The betrayal, the broken engagement, the weight of starting over. Adrian listened, not with the distracted nod of someone passing time, but with the focus of a man starved for connection. He didn't tell her who he really was. For once, he wanted to be just Adrian. Not the billionaire, not the headline, just a man who could offer warmth to a stranger. 2 lonely worlds collide. Days turned into weeks. What started as chance meetings over coffee became long walks through the city, conversations that stretched into the night, laughter that felt like medicine. Alara didn't know why this stranger cared, why he showed up again and again, but she was grateful. Adrian, on the other hand, found himself changing. For years, his life had been built on numbers, deals, and empires. But with Alara, it was built on small things, her smile when she saw him waiting, the way she closed her eyes when listening to street musicians, her ability to find beauty even after heartbreak. She didn't want his money. She didn't even know about it. And that made her different from everyone else. But beneath the sweetness, challenges loomed. The challenges. 1. His secret life. Adrian's identity was a time bomb. Every day he delayed telling her who he really was, the harder it became. He feared that once she discovered the truth, she'd feel betrayed, like he'd manipulated her trust. 2. Her fear of love. Alara wasn't ready to open her heart again. She kept walls up, reminding herself not to fall too fast, too deep. Love had failed her once, and she wasn't sure she could survive another heartbreak. 3. The outside world. Eventually, the press noticed Adrian's absence from high society events. Rumors swirled. When photos surfaced of him walking through the city with Alara, whispers turned into headlines. And soon, her quiet world was invaded by flashing cameras and judgmental strangers. The breaking point. The night it all came crashing down, Alara had just returned to her small apartment when she saw the news. Billionaire Adrian Hale seen with mystery woman. Who is she? Her heart stopped. She replayed every conversation, every laugh, every tender moment. He had hidden it all from her. When he knocked on her door minutes later, she was shaking with betrayal. "You lied to me," she said, her voice trembling. "All this time, you let me believe you were just, you." Adrian's eyes softened, filled with regret. "I am just me with you, Alara. That's all I wanted. To be a man, not a bank account, not a headline." But her walls slammed back into place. "I can't do this. I can't be someone's secret or someone's story. I needed honesty, and you couldn't give me that." She closed the door, and for the first time in years, Adrian Hale, the untouchable billionaire, felt utterly helpless. Redemption. Weeks passed. Alara tried to move on, but she couldn't erase him from her heart. Adrian, too, wrestled with his loneliness. He realized that money could buy comfort, power, distraction, but not love. Not her. So he did something no one expected. He walked away from his empire for a time, leaving the boardrooms and the glittering parties behind. He showed up at the small community center where Alara volunteered, quietly helping, blending in as just another pair of hands. At first, she ignored him. Then she noticed the way he carried boxes, listened to children's stories, stayed long after everyone else had left. He wasn't the billionaire anymore. He was just Adrian, the man who had once given her a hug when she needed it most. Slowly, her anger melted. The resolution. One evening, after weeks of silent forgiveness building between them, Alara found him sitting outside the center, his hands folded, eyes distant. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. He looked up, vulnerability etched across his face. "Because when you whispered, 'Pretend to hug me,' I realized something. I've been pretending my whole life, pretending that money made me happy, that power made me whole. But it didn't. You did. Even if you never love me back, I'd rather spend my life as just Adrian, by your side, than as Adrian Hale, the billionaire, without you." Her heart ached. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the truth in his words. And for the first time since her heartbreak, she allowed herself to believe again. Alara stepped closer, her voice trembling but steady. "Then don't pretend anymore. Hug me, for real this time." And he did, not as a stranger, not as a billionaire, but as a man who had finally found where he belonged. The message. Their journey wasn't perfect. They faced gossip, doubts, and the slow work of rebuilding trust. But through it all, they discovered that love isn't about wealth or status, it's about being truly seen, truly chosen, when the world falls apart. Alara once thought she'd lost everything. Adrian once thought he had everything. But together, they found what mattered most. And it all began with 5 simple words whispered in a crowded train station. "Pretend to hug me."